Hello, my name is Ira Bolden. I'm your guest host today on the Tokyo Living Podcast. I'm going to be interviewing for you Sam Gilbert, the creative force behind the podcast. Sam, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you, Ira. Thank you very much for stepping up into the role of guest host. You join a long line of three people, and you're the first who's not related to me to actually do the guest host honours. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you getting the dress code memo as well. And if Ralph Lauren want to reach out and offer us any sponsorship deals, I'd be happy to take that on.
I think they definitely should. So I'm here because I've known Sam for quite a long time. I'm going to ask some intriguing questions so that other people can get to know you as well as I do. The first question I've got for you, Sam, is can you just tell us a little bit about your background? Where you're from? What was it like growing up?
Sure. So I think most people know that I'm Australian, and if you haven't figured out by the accent, you're probably from North America and trying to figure out whether I'm Australian or English. I still don't get that. Anyway, I grew up in I grew up in Australia, in Melbourne, basically 100 kilometres outside Melbourne, in a country town or city, depending on how you want to define it, called Ballarat. It's probably got over 100,000 people now. I grew up, my story isn't a rags to riches one. We had a fairly comfortable lifestyle, went to private school in the city. My parents were fairly successful in business. They worked extremely hard to get that success, but that also provided us a lot of opportunities. I know I always used to look at how hard my parents worked, and especially saw my dad, who was very busy with his business at that time, and always thought, I never want to be a businessman. I just want to work. I don't want to have to worry about a business. I'll be a physio instead, right? And then
I think you failed at that.
Yeah, I failed miserably. Ended up doing physio, but making a business out of it, and probably working just as hard as my parents ever did. But yeah, like I said, we had a comfortable lifestyle. I've got a younger brother who's 5 years younger than me. We've also got older half siblings from my father's first marriage, who the oldest actually has kids the same age as me and my brother. So my dad, I think now is up to 11 grandkids and 10 great grandkids. So we've got a big family, and for the most part, that family has stayed in that town. My parents were very supportive of us, whether it was in academics or athletics, but they weren't super pushy either. If we wanted to do something, if we wanted to push at something, they would certainly help us and give us all their support, but we weren't really pushed into anything. Played a variety of sports, and eventually found my first true love of karate.
Sam, a lot of people know about your karate experience, but one thing I've always found interesting is that you also have a big love for music.
Yeah, so I started karate when I was 8, and actually started guitar when I was 7. I played guitar through to the end of high school, relatively seriously. I studied music as a subject during school, and up until my mid to late teens, I guess, I was still thinking of music as a potential career option. There were two streams that became evident as I went through my formative years, and one was sort of the musician stream, and the other was going into physiotherapy and combining that with martial arts and sports performance. All that sort of seemed to point in the same direction, and as I went through my career, the karate, the martial arts, and physio, they complemented each other, whereas the lifestyle of the musician, I think, wouldn't have sort of gelled with my martial arts career as well. So I studied music up until the end of school, and I had a band. We shout out to all the Pork Sword members out there. We won't go into the origins behind that name.
What kind of music did you guys play?
Well, it's interesting. We started off as a death metal band and ended up playing the type of music you'd probably expect to hear in some low-budget adult films. Like we had a phrase. We started off doing quite heavy metal, and we had a combination of covers and originals. I think it was, it was a group of friends who had somewhat similar but somewhat diverse interests in music. So we sort of tried to cater to each other's tastes, and so that meant that we played a variety of things, and we had a lot of fun with that, and recorded a couple of originals that might still be out there either on the internet or my wife's playlist. I don't know what.
Give everybody names. We can go.
Okay, so if you Google Caress, There's parts of it where I'm singing in a female voice to my best of my ability. So that might be out there in the interweb somewhere. If you want me to send you a copy of it, you can DM me. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. I'm going to DM you about that.
But yeah, that all came. The beginnings of my music interest came before I actually got into karate.
So let's dive into karate then. Right now, give us the explanation of how did you get started.
So in the beginning, I just wanted to learn how to fight. Not because I was bullied or picked on. I didn't really have that experience growing up, and our lifestyle where we lived, it wasn't really a threat per se of being in trouble. It's not like I grew up in
the
Bronx, and I wanted to be the threat based on just what I've seen from movies, and I just wanted to have that ability to walk into a room and just be able to kick everyone's ass and have that sort of power and that ability. And that's what drove my initial desire to walk into a karate dojo. But once I got in there, I realised that there was a great sport behind at least the style that I was doing. It was called Kyokushin. Our organisation is called Shin Kyokushin, but the style I started was Kyokushin Karate, and it has a reputation as being a very hard style of competition. It's a full contact style. We don't wear gloves. We don't punch to the head, and there's certain aspects of it that aren't necessarily that applicable in an actual fight, like a street fight or self-defense environment. But to me, it appealed as a really fun sport and something that I wanted to pursue. And once I got into it, I pushed fairly hard. I started off sort of competing somewhat seriously, and I can remember there was one competition in 1993. It was just before I turned 13. I managed to sort of sneak into the under 13 age division. I think they went up in threes in terms of the ages. And I won a state title that I wasn't really expecting to win. And from there, that sort of flipped the switch. And I think that was probably the start. I can remember I was actually a little bit more into the music at that stage. I was playing a lot of guitar, and so I went along to the state tournament and managed to win. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this actually feels good. I like the fact I like getting up on stage and getting a trophy. And I remember because I was trying to look like Kurt Cobain. I was trying to grow my hair out. The problem was my hair didn't grow sort of down. It grew to about my ears and then wanted to go back up to the roots. So it sort of looped around like this.
Whoa.
So it looked really bad. And I've got naturally quite thick hair. And so whenever I went to the hairdresser, I needed to get it thinned out. But it didn't really make the nice flowing rock star hair that I would have liked. And so I can remember going up on stage to get my trophy. And there was a relatively famous boxer called John Famicom who was presenting the trophies. And I didn't really know who this guy was, but he was sort of semi-famous and he was on the board and whatever. Anyway, so he said, congratulations, it was a really great fight. And then the guy who was handing the trophies to John was standing next to him, and I went to shake his hand, and he shook my hand, and he goes, "Get a haircut."
Whoa.
And so I think that was sort of a trigger. It's like, oh, okay, maybe I should just focus on being a karate champion, leave the rock star part.
Wow.
And I think that was a little bit of a change. And I actually just thought of that now, but maybe that sort of...
That was the inflection.
Yeah,
the inflection.
Yeah.
Very
and
interesting.
I can't remember much of what this guy looked like, but I'm pretty sure he had a big mullet and a moustache, and he was telling me to get a haircut. So it must have been bad, right?
That's bad. Yeah. Take care of it, kid. Very cool. So now you decided to do karate, but how do you sustain it to a level that you competed in 2009? You were fourth place at the Worlds in karate. What was it that kept you motivated to keep going and going and going, getting better and better?
Yeah, it was just a desire to win. And I've often gone back and tried to analyse where the motivations, how intrinsic or extrinsic those motivations were, whether I truly wanted that sensation of winning or I wanted like the accolades and the acknowledgement that comes along with winning. I'm not sure, to be honest. I still haven't quite figured that out. But whatever it was, I liked the idea of success, and that sort of drove me. And yeah, I realised as I went through this process of competing and preparing for competitions, that I had a fairly strong work ethic, and I've carried that work ethic into other areas of my life, and I attribute that to both the nature and nurture of the environment that I grew up in, with my parents being very hard workers, and then I also just sort of developed, I guess, a relationship with hard work, that I put sort of effort into a certain thing and then got a reward and enjoyed that process. And so, I just learned how to work hard. I think we'll probably talk about later what things I do differently in my life. I think I'd still, to this day, need to work a little smarter and not only work hard. But it was really that I set myself the goal of being world champion when I was a kid, and I just continued to work towards that.
You understand about your karate, your motivation, and your drive there. When did physio enter into the picture?
Yeah, so I think at the same time that I became fascinated with karate, so I guess the main influences for me getting into martial arts were movies. I was a massive Jean-Claude Van Damme fan, and I love watching Bruce Lee movies, and the Karate Kid was a big motivation. Not the actual kid himself. I actually wanted to be Johnny rather than, and even
the bad kid on the block.
Exactly, and watching Netflix and YouTube released the Cobra Kai series, which I absolutely loved, and it was great to sort of relive that, and made my wife watch a couple of episodes, and she was like, "This is just so cheesy. Do we have to watch this?" And I was like, "You don't understand. Everything we wouldn't even have met if it wasn't for the beef between Daniel and Johnny that drove me into karate, and then eventually took me to Japan." But anyway, one of the things though that apart from the ability to fight was the physique that these martial artists had, especially Van Damme, and so I wanted to be strong and have that physicality. I think I even see this in my sons, especially my oldest son. My sons are both my older two obsessed with WWE, and I'm sure the 1-year-old is not far off getting into it as well. But they've also gone through stages where they've been really into superheroes, and they've sort of identified these what I call now as biomotor abilities. The strength, power, speed, all these different attributes that a superhero or a wrestler or whatever it has that allows them to be dominant in physical situations, and I really sort of took to that. So I basically started lifting anything I could find. I had my parents still bring it up. I had a homemade barbell set where I took a broomstick and attached, like, we had a toy cash register, but it was like made out of steel, and it was quite solid. And I tied that to one end, and then I had like a watermelon and a grapefruit in a plastic bag on the other, and then I would just sort of lift that up. And then my mum had like 1.5 kilo dumbbells, and I'd do some curls with those. And then once I was old enough, my mum took me to the local university gym, and set me up with one of the trainers there, and they taught me how to actually live properly and go through all that.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so I think that that interest in physicality and sports science, as I came to understand it, as started quite young as well. The physio side, I think that I'm not sure when it started. I can't identify a specific moment. It's not like I had some physios will say, I had this injury when I was young, and the physio helped me through it, and that sort of inspired me to get into the industry. I didn't really have that, but at some point I developed this fascination with, I guess at the same time as I had a fascination with trying to hurt people, I also had this fascination with trying to fix people. I thought the idea of someone being hurt, and especially in a sports sense, someone's ability to perform sport being negatively impacted and being able to fix them seemed really appealing. As I became a physio, I realised that we don't fix people. That's not what we do. We coach people through a rehab process or a pain experience. We unpack that. We assess that individual and hopefully give them the tools to self-manage their condition. But at the time, knew that aura of being able to fix people seemed very appealing, and so I think even a couple of years before the end of my high school, I had decided that I wanted to get into physio. And I feel lucky because a lot of people will finish high school and even finish university and not really have any idea of what they want to do. So I'm pretty grateful that I had a relatively clear career path, even into my sort of mid-20s.
Yeah, I mean, early on you had this desire to be world champion and the desire to go ahead and give you a break, you're going to fix them. That's a pretty good business model. So.
Yes. It's the 360 model.
I know Karate Kid is really important to your life, but something interesting is that the Miyagis, do they really live next door to you?
Yeah, so where we live now, we bought the plot of land in 2018 and then moved in 2019. And yeah, we realised that the people living directly opposite us, Mr. and Mrs. Miyagi, lovely couple, probably in their 70s. They live with their daughter there, and the Miyagis are my neighbours.
Did you tell them about?
No, they have no idea.
They have no idea?
No. But yeah, we have a good relationship, and just this morning, my 19-month-old now, Archie, came out the front door, and Mr. Miyagi was there up on the balcony hanging out. He's washing, and Archie looked up at me and waved and goes, "Oh, hi, all!" And Mr. Miyagi gave him the little hail back, and yeah, so.
I think it was meant to be. You know?
Absolutely.
The Karate Kid aura continues to take care of you.
No, it really is probably the most ironic thing about my whole Japan.
So, tell me how you actually got here, though, to Tokyo. Right? You got this love of karate. You decided, okay, Genesis music and do physio. Why Japan?
Yeah, so I think going back to the Karate Kid, going back to karate as an art was developed in Japan. It has its roots in Chinese martial arts through the Okinawa, and then there were masters that brought Okinawa to mainland Japan. But it's popularized as a Japanese martial art. Kyokushin karate as a style has its headquarters in Japan, and now it's unfortunately fragmented into a number of different organizations due to political problems that I think happen in all walks of life. And it was centered in Japan. There were always Japanese instructors that came out to Australia. Some of them lived for a certain amount of time. One of my biggest mentors was fortunately passed away about a decade ago, but Ishii Shihan was someone who had stayed at the Tokyo Honbu, the Kyokushin Honbu, and the Japanese instructors were technically very good. They had this aura about them that sort of made me want to learn more about the way that karate was taught in Japan. There's also the Karate Kid side. In Karate Kid 2, Daniel follows Mr. Miyagi over to what was supposed to be Okinawa. I think it was actually filmed in Oahu. But they sort of, that gave me an extra spark of interest in Japanese karate. And then also there were a few competitors, both in Australia and overseas, who had lived for periods of time in Japan, and then that had sort of bolstered their competitive career. One of them is Nick Pettis, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with. He ended up going into K1. He's actually been on the podcast. And he actually runs the Nisha CrossFit.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah. So he was one who came over here. He lived for 3 years at the Kyokushin headquarters of Honbu, and then came out just an absolute beast of a fighter. And there was another friend of mine who was actually in the same program as him, a year above, Judd Reed from Australia, who I ended up training with when I was living in Melbourne. And he had also done that same program, and the same thing, he graduated, just a different person in terms of his competitive status and everything. So I thought that that was something that I wanted to try and do. I finished high school and I was able to defer my university placement for a year. And I was lucky enough to get a training scholarship to come out here for what ended up being 5 months. And I was living in Shikoku in Kochi, which some of the listeners might be familiar with, some of them might have been there. But it is a relatively rural place in Shikoku. And but the guy who was branch chief, still is branch chief, he's one of the vice presidents of our organisation. He had fairly high ranking in the organisation, and he was close with Ishii Shihan, who's his mentor, one of my mentors in Australia. And so they organised for me to go over there and live for 5 months and basically train full time. And it was a very, very hard 5 months. I was 18. I probably saw or interacted with 3 other foreigners in the 5 months that I was there. I didn't speak any Japanese. And I was living with one of the senpai, sort of the head instructor in the dojo, Takezawa Sensei, who ended up going through a fairly successful competitive career himself. He got to the final of a couple of All Japan Championships in the weight category and as a middleweight. But I was living with him, and when the experience was described to me, they said, "Oh, you'll be living in Takezawa-san's apartment." And I said, "Okay, cool." I don't think I'd ever been in an apartment. Like, we grew up in a country town. Everyone had houses. There's no high-rise living in Ballarat. There are a few apartments there now, but yeah, even what would be called as apartment or a unit in Ballarat was still like it was bigger than any apartment that most people would be living in Tokyo. So I was expecting to be living in something like that. I mean, 3 or 4 bedrooms and just So I get to this guy's apartment, and it was a rokujo room with a tiny little kitchen, and I walked into the room, and it's like, is this your room or my room? And it was both of our rooms, and stupidly, we talked about the music, I'd brought my guitar. There was no room for that, so that was stored away, because I thought I'd play some guitar in between training sessions, which I did, which helped me keep sane. But yeah, I mean, for him, he was 28 at the time, he's got this smelly little gaijin 18-year-old living with him because his shigocho told him that that's what he had to do, and so I got the shit beaten out of me for 5 months, and he was very hard on me. And maybe part of it was taking it out, that I was interrupting his life, his space for that period of time. But he was also a great mentor, and that was a very physically toughening and mentally toughening experience for me.
Sounds like a great experience.
We were training 3 times a day, most days. It was at least 2, sometimes 3 sessions a day, and sparring was very hard. And I was technically okay, but I was physically immature compared to the guys I was training with, and so really toughened up. And so I really thank both the Shibucho, Miyoshi-san, and Takezawa-san for that experience. And I still catch up with him at tournaments a couple of times a year, and he was great. I mean, he was, I think, ahead of his time in terms of the sports science side. I did a lot of plyometric training with him, which I'd never done before, and his strength training. He was really strong in the gym, and he taught me a lot of lifting technique. I basically went over to Japan training like a bodybuilder, and he actually sort of changed my weight training up and taught me to train a little bit more specific for sports performance, and that really helped. He wasn't the most technical guy, and I think that probably limited him, that he never won an All Japan Championship. He also got 4th in a World Cup, like I did, in the middleweights, the 4 years before I did. But I think he was just very fit, very strong, and loved to go in and bang, and maybe that sort of installed a little bit of that mentality with me, that I just needed to be technical, strong, and fit, and that would see me have success rather than stepping back and being a little bit more tactical. But that was my first experience with Japan, and then I went back and qualified for the national team. So the year after, I started my university degree, and then also competed in my first World Cup. That was 2001. Went through uni, finished the 4-year physiotherapy degree, and at that stage, in that 4 years, I'd actually had 2 major knee injuries. I had 2 reconstructions in 18 months, and I didn't know how much longer at that point my knees would be able to hold out, and so
were these before? When you came 4th?
Yes, way before. So that was 2009. We're talking end of 2004. I came out to Japan, and so I thought, I really need to make a decent go of this now, and so I wanted to come back to Japan, and was lucky enough to get another scholarship, this time with the dojo in Fukuoka, and that was actually
small apartment still.
Yes, it was. I was ready for it though, and
you kept the guitar back in Australia.
I left the guitar in Australia, and I didn't bring that back out here until 2011, I think, until Lani and I had a big enough space. I came out to Fukuoka, and that was under the current president of our organisation. Now, he was based most of the time in Tokyo. He also ran a branch in his home island of Amami-Oshima, but he oversaw the Fukuoka branch. I knew that I'd be living in cramped quarters. We had a 2-bedroom place in which we housed between 4 and 5 people, 2 bedrooms. So there was 2 people in
Right.
each room, or sometimes 3.
60 square meters.
No. The whole place, 30 maybe. It was basically 2 Rockajaw rooms, and then a kitchen, and bathroom. Yeah. So it was pretty cramped, but I was okay with that. It wasn't as much of a shock, based on what I've been through before. And also, there was a 10-year age difference between myself and Takazawa-san, so he was still very much my superior. When I went over to Fukuoka, the guys I was living with were my age, so we actually had a lot of fun. And the Takazawa-san was almost like an older brother, and whereas the guys I was living with were more like friends. So so I was there for 10 months, and then during that time, even before coming out to Tokyo, I had looked at physiotherapy options in Japan, and I saw that there was an expat physiotherapy practice, and so I was in contact with the owners, and my goal was always to try and get to Tokyo and continue my work as a physio, because I needed to finance my time out here, and I also wanted to keep up my physio skills. So I was coming to Tokyo in October of 2005 for the All Japan Championship, and my ideal scenario was that I'd stay on after that, stay in Tokyo, and then continue working in Tokyo Physio, and that came to fruition. So I was offered a job, and came up to Tokyo and was working there for 7 years. So basically until I retired from competition and sort of went on to the next stage.
For Club 360. Before we jump into Club 360, I want to just bring you back a little bit. Talk about 4th place finish. And disappointment. You want to be world champion in the 4th. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, it was interesting. It wasn't dissimilar to my first experience of winning a state title that really sparked that change in mindset and the big focus on karate. I wasn't really expecting to do as well. I think 2 years earlier in the World Championships, so basically our organisation has a World Championship every 2 years. One is an open weight tournament, and that is the most prestigious event. That's the World Tournament. And then you have the World Cup, which is a weight division tournament. I thought that I was going to do really well in the 2007 open weight tournament. By 2009, I was already starting to think a little bit more about life after karate and what I might want to do. And I still trained extremely hard for that tournament, but I wasn't as completely focused as I was in other tournaments. I think that was actually helpful. So I wasn't as nervous, and I was a lot more relaxed about the whole experience. And so when I went over there, I still thought that I could do fairly well, and I actually had a very favourable draw. And looking at the draw, the guy that was fighting in the first round, he was a strong fighter. He was a number 2 Russian fighter, and the tournament was in St. Petersburg, so it was a hometown advantage for him. But in our rule set, if the fight is a draw, we get 2 extension rounds, and if it's still a draw after that, and a fight being a draw, it's not like some combat sports, the judges have to make a decision on each round, whereas some combat sports, you can make a round a draw, and depending on the sport or the organisation, what the judges decide is sufficient enough to give a fighter a decision. It varies immensely. So in some tournaments, you might see someone get beaten up and then it'd still be called a draw because they just want to see a lot of extensions. They want the fighters to work. They want to really see the fighters prove themselves. But anyway, I think that it was a relatively even match. I think I probably got on top of him a little bit at the end, but it was called a draw, and I won on weight. So basically, if it's still a draw after 2 extensions, they go to scales, and if there's a 10-kilo split, then the lighter fighter will be a victory. Now, he was like, I was 90 kilos, he was, I think, like 115, so I won that fight on weight. And then looking ahead, and that was my plan. I think I can survive the first part of the bout, and then he didn't have the best stamina. He had very hard body punches, but I was actually fairly strong in the body, and I had a good distance game that I could actually shut down some of his attacks and then tire him out, and that's what I did. And then after that, like the road through to the semi-finals actually looked pretty clear because everyone I was scheduled to possibly match up against had in some way been inferior to this guy I'd beaten in the first round. Like either they'd lost to someone that he'd beaten, or they had lost to someone he was sort of very close to, and so I worked it out that it's not always the case. Matchups make fights, and it's not always A beats B, therefore, and B beats C, therefore A must beat C. But I had it in my mind that if I could beat this guy, if I could get the decision, then I would be on the level to be able to beat the other guys in my block and make it through to the semi-finals. And that's exactly what happened. And so everything was going as planned. And in a way, even me losing in the semi-finals was sort of as planned, because I hadn't actually been able to visualise my way past the semi-finals. And part of that was that I was competing against my childhood hero, not Van Damme, another childhood hero, in Tsukamoto-san, who I ended up training with when I was in Tokyo. So basically, the 6 years leading up to that tournament, I was sparring with this guy a couple of times a week, and he was a big mentor to me. He taught me a lot, and I've spoken about Tsukamoto-san on other interviews before, but he was one of the biggest influences in my life, and one of the most wonderful people you've ever met. And everyone who's had the chance of interacting with him is an instant fan. He's just got an aura about him. Not only technically, he was the most exciting fighter to watch, but just as a person, he's an incredible person. And so I couldn't get over the mental barrier of fighting against someone who I'd looked up to so much, but had also given me so much. And he was in a position where I could have taken physically. He was very tired from his last match, and I was still fresh. I was actually building, and I was holding myself back, and I kept telling myself, and our national team coach was shouting at me, like, Sam, this isn't a sparring match. And I was like, I know, but this has been a sparring match for 6 years. Oh, wow. And I can't get over that. I can't actually flick the switch. And so...
Did he tell you, Sam? Did he encourage you to...
No, he didn't. I think he probably knew that at that stage, if I fired up, I probably could have taken the match. But I just couldn't mentally take those breaks off. And looking back on it, do I regret it? I'm not sure. I feel like I should regret it, but then maybe that would have changed our relationship, and I'm not sure whether I would have gone in to win the final. He lost in the final, and the guy that won the final, the Bulgarian guy, has won, I think, 3 World Cups. He's probably, him and Tsukamoto, within our organisation, after the organisation split, within our side of the organisation, those two are clearly sort of the GOATs. But I'd look at the history of full contact karate or knockdown style karate and put those two as the 1 and 2 greatest of all time, in my opinion.
That's amazing.
So they ended up fighting in that, and I'm not sure that I would have beaten this guy Valeri. So I still don't know whether I would have become world champion. I would have given myself a better chance. But looking back on it, I'm still proud of what I did in that tournament, and everyone still talks about the time that I went the distance, and it went down to the very last extension. So it went to the point where went to the weight, the scales, we were within 10 kilos of each other, and so we had to fight out another extension, at which point the judges do have to make a decision then, and they decided in his favour. So yeah, that was, and that sort of sparked my motivation then to compete for another 2 years. And so I can continue competing up until the next openweight world tournament, and then retired after that.
So through that, I can see this the importance that you put on the relationship, to the point where it was holding you back from taking them. You probably could have taken them.
Yeah.
Sam, can you tell us a little bit about how you managed the transition going from competing, very high level in karate to not competing anymore? Yeah,
it was lucky in a way with the timing. At the end of 2011, I had my last competition in October, which it wasn't like a decision after the tournament thinking, I'm done. I'd decided leading up to it that was going to be my last competition. And I was actually lucky, Tsukamoto, who I mentioned before, he won that tournament in 2011, and he'd also decided that he was going to retire. We were on opposite sides of the draw. In a perfect world, I would have loved to fight him in the final, but still probably would have lost. But I didn't make it to the final. He ended up winning, which was fantastic for him, and we're all very happy. But yeah, I'd already decided to retire. I'd also decided to propose to Lani, and we were sort of planning to get, we were planning to get married the year after. I actually asked her permission and did the right thing. I asked her father for permission in March when we went back to Australia after the earthquake. And but it had been like 7 months and there was still no proposal. We joked, 8 months I think, he was going to actually retract his blessing as a joke. Don't hurry up. But I wanted to get the tournament out of the way. So ended up getting engaged in November, retired from competition. I also started my Masters early the year after, and we started looking for locations for 360. So
you don't believe in taking it easy.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was just so many changes to my life that I wasn't even thinking about a competition then. Like it had just, and I think that throwing myself into a lot of different things, we got ready to get married in 2012, and then we got the keys to Club 360, and I was into my Masters, and there was a lot of distractions. And so I think that really helped with the transition, just having a lot of other stuff going on in my life. I think if I had just been doing the same job and nothing else was changing, and all of a sudden I wasn't competing, I think that would have been good.
Things that are coming into life,
Yeah.
given that you're competing every day,
Exactly.
training every day.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about this word here: training and working out. Can you tell some? I've known you in this.
I don't even know that.
This is a fun little story here, right? One day I was talking about working out,
Yeah.
and you had a visceral reaction to that word. Can you tell me why that
A lot of people
is?
make fun of this, and I'm less concerned about it now. I've actually one of the software we use is called True Coach, and it basically allows us to program the training. It's what we use to notate our training sessions and then send that to clients for them to use on an app at home. But it says, today's workout, and then it will send you a notification saying, Sam, you missed your workout, or if you've pre-programmed it, said, Sam, here's your workout for today. I've written to True Coach twice saying, is it possible to change? And obviously, if they couldn't just change it for us, they'd have to change for everyone. So I said, can you just change it to training session? Can you remove the W word? And I get a lot of jokes made at work about my hatred of the word workout. But I think, for whatever reason, it just from when I was growing up, workout was a word that was used to describe like Jane Fonda videos, jumping jacks, step aerobics, working out. And I think we joked about this before, but it came across to me as a very American term. It's, I need to do a workout. I need to work out. And I think the way that, to me, it seems like something that you do to get up a sweat and just to exercise, to move, which is fantastic. I have no problem with people working out. I think that if someone does any sort of physical activity, that's a plus. Right? But what I'm trying to do, either with my clients or with myself, is perform an intervention to elicit a specific training response, to elicit a specific adaptation. And for me, just the way that the word workout and the connotations that has raised throughout my life and throughout my experience, I feel like that word workout doesn't do that process of stimulus and adaptation justice. Okay. And so that's why I just don't like the term. But the problem is, with current, in the fitness world, the smartest people in the world use the word workout. And they're talking about all the stuff that I'm talking about in terms of training stimulus and adaptation, and they're doing that, and they're programming on a much, 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 much higher level than I am, and they still say, well, this is how we're going to structure our workout if someone goes to workout. So it's not like, it's incorrect usage of the word, it's just that it's my bias. Yeah, so. I'll put up with it, but you'll never hear me saying that. Well, actually, I have worked out. Like last year, I think I worked out. I worked out maybe 3 times, and I'll usually work out when I don't have the time or motivation to train.
Okay.
So, for example, last year we were on holidays in Shimoda, and we're at the beach house, and I had a TRX, and I hooked it up to the roof, and I did some rows. I did some push-ups with my two sons on my back. I did some squats holding on to them.
Two both on your back?
Yep. And
I've done it with my one dog.
really, yeah. I could get a few reps out with both the kids on. And it's basically just moving and keeping some level of strength stimulus there.
Okay.
But I'm not going down, I'm not writing down sets and reps, I'm not working out percentages, I'm not analysing my proximity to failure, I'm not counting it as my total training load. That's just to keep something going. That's what I describe as a workout, and I probably did that 3 times in 2012. I think I did it maybe once or twice while I was on holidays this year.
You did a workout?
So yeah, I'll work out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's the other time I can remember, and when we were putting new equipment at the Hills location, this was a few years ago, we were carrying there was a lot of heavy boxes of equipment that we put together, carrying them from a truck, and it took an hour, and I sort of went through, there was like 10 of us, it was great, we had the whole team doing it, and at the end of it, I said, guys, that is what I call a workout. Randomly lifting stuff
I love it.
and getting sweaty and getting tired with no structure. That was one of the best workouts I've ever had.
I love it. I'm glad I know what a workout is and what a training session is. I'm gonna dive into 360 now.
Yeah.
You know, and one day I remember it just blew me. I knew you for many years, and it blew me away when all of a sudden it was like, wait, Nathan's your brother-in-law? You know, I didn't know that.
There's some people that have actually known us, like Dr. Tom Lomax has been on the show many, many times. Like, he's been our main referrer. I've known him, but probably at the time, I'd known him for like 5 years. And we were sitting around having dinner with some other doctors, and I was explaining the business. I said, yeah, I run this with my brother-in-law, Nathan. And Tom's like, what? So, yeah, I mean, I met my wife, Lani, through Nathan. So I can actually remember, because I used to train at Gold's Gym. And I can remember going into Gold's Gym for the first time, and there was like a board of personal trainers. And I can remember looking at them, and they all looked a little sort of weird and stuck up with their different poses. And then there was this one like redheaded Aussie guy there that looked a lot more chill than the rest, and it's like, oh, that's cool that there's a Australian trained PT working at Gold's Gym. He actually worked a different branch, so he worked out of Montesando, and I was training at Harajuku. And then as I sort of went through working with clients at Tokyo Physio, many of them had trained with Nathan, and so I ended up meeting him and getting to know him, and then, while I was still at Tokyo Physio, Nathan actually brought his sister Lani out to help with his personal training business. So Lani did work as a trainer, and she also has a beauty background. And then once she started doing some personal training here, they also realised that there was a big market for beauty salons, for expat-focused beauty salons. So they ended up setting up Alana Jade at the end of 2009. So that's coming up to 13, 14 years in business, which is pretty amazing. So they've been running that. And then at the end, once I retired from competition in 2011, I always thought that I'd go back to Australia after retiring from competition. I really just saw Japan as a place that would give me the opportunity to further my martial arts career. And that's why I came here. Basically, I came out because of the things that we talked about before, but primarily because I wasn't getting the competitional training experience that I thought was necessary to become world champion while I was in Australia. So, however, meeting Lani and forming more of a life here, we talked about wanting to stay longer, and we really liked Japan. And so it made sense then, I really, I feel very deeply indebted to Bevan and his wife Vanessa for getting me started at Tokyo Physio and giving me the opportunity, because if I hadn't have had that opportunity, I might have been English teaching to pay my way through the competitive career, because we weren't really getting paid, even though I was competing.
I think at that time, that was, at least I searched, that's how I got to know you,
right,
was when you were there, and that was like the only
physio
in town.
Exactly. So I had the opportunity to continue working as a physiotherapist, making a good living while I was training for competition. But after 7 years, I'd sort of outgrown the clinic and wanted to do more. And I started my master's in exercise science and strength and conditioning. So I had this interest in sports performance, and which, when you look at physiotherapy now, there's a lot more focus on strength and conditioning as the sort of main treatment modality combined with education and advice. Whereas that's 10, 15 years ago, there wasn't as big a focus. And coming from an elite sports background, and also coming from my personal background in karate, where I relied a lot on my physicality, I had a strong interest in training, in strength and conditioning and that side. So I started doing my masters, and I wanted to be in an environment where I could do that. Tokyo Physio, at that time, they've opened a new facility now, which is fantastic for them. But at that time, they didn't really have the gym set up there. Yeah. And what I've talked about before in terms of the way that physiotherapists approach management of conditions, I think has encouraged Tokyo Physio to change their sort of their premises and locate their facilities. But at that time, it wasn't there, so I wanted to have a gym environment. So. And Nathan had always wanted to have his own facility as well. He trained out of Gold's Gym and out of the park and doing that sort of contractor type of role as a trainer. But yeah, he's always dreamt about having his own facility. So it just made perfect sense at that stage for us to try and find somewhere where we could combine both the rehab side and the training together, and also incorporate boxing and martial arts. Nathan at that time had just started Executive Fight Night with a couple of friends who actually ended up becoming Club 360 investors. And so we also needed a space where we could train the participants for Executive Fight Night. So everything just fell into place. It's like if we could find somewhere where you could do training, physio, boxing, and then for me, I can teach my kids karate there. It just all made sense. So that was the easy part. Finding somewhere we could do all that in one of the most expensive cities in the world was the hard part. Luckily, it was actually after the earthquake in 2011 obviously ruined a lot of people's lives and took a lot of lives, but it did change the real estate market sufficiently so that we were actually able to get in where we would have really struggled to find the space. I mean, you've obviously spent a lot of time in our space. We're lucky to have now 2 facilities. So here, where we are at the tower location, we have 300 square metres. Our other location, we have 400 square metres. To give you an idea, we pay almost double the rent on this place that we do on the bigger place in Montalazaboo. So we got a very good deal, and we've managed to keep. The rent has gone up, but we're still paying a very good rate for that location. So we're very lucky, and we're also lucky that Nathan had a pre-existing clientele. I had a reputation. I didn't take clients from Tokyo Physio, but people knew about me and they ended up finding me. So it wasn't like we were starting from scratch, and I think that was helpful because having the overheads from day one and not having some sort of cash flow and some sort of client base would have been very difficult.
Tell me a little bit, Sam, about. I think it's very unique, the approach that you take, you and Nathan take, about the care for someone who comes in with some long-term pain.
Yep.
And what's the philosophy you guys have toward approaching that patient?
It's very complex, and I think I've talked about pain in general and on other episodes, and I find it very difficult to talk about these sort of things in simplistic terms, but as basic as I can be. I mean, we look at the individual client, what problem they have, and you want to identify it as a problem. And it might not be. Someone might just have the goal of getting healthier, but what is the base thing that's driving them to be healthy? Is it longevity? Is it they want to look better? Is it a combination of different things? Is it pressure from someone else? Is a family member concerned about their health and them wanting to get healthier? That will change how we approach it might not necessarily change the the exercise selection or sets and reps, but it does change the psychology behind how we approach an individual. And then if they're in pain, I mean, there's so many things that go into that that we need to analyse. And like I said, I've talked about this in previous episodes. And if you're watching the YouTube version of this, I can actually link to these episodes here. So where I'm pointing, if it's the right side of the screen, I'll point on this side as well in case I've messed that up. But we'll put links to different, because if you want to know about how I approach pain and how I approach injury rehabilitation, it is quite a complex thing. But at the base of it though, we want to try and have a relationship with the person to the point where we really understand what that person needs. And then, like you said, we've got a range of different services and different professionals with different skills and different personalities and different backgrounds. And we've got a number of different cultures of our staff, which is a lot of fun and can sometimes cause a lot of problems, but also provides us different options for people as well.
I like how you put it all together, Sam. I think, you say it's complex, but in your treatment of me, it felt like I'm going back to the Karate Kid, the wax on, wax off.
Yeah.
He's doing these things, he's doing wax on, wax off. He doesn't understand it. It's like, this is really boring. So what am I freaking doing? And then all of a sudden he realizes he's fighting. Oh, this is what's working. I had a chronic pain in my shoulder, and the staff here, really, they changed my life around. I didn't have pain anymore. I understood how to deal with it, and I had a different outlook on my pain.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you for that. And definitely check out the links if you want to know more about pain.
Thank you. We'd love to hear stories where we've been able to help people, because that's what we're trying to do, and that's what makes us happy. That's what drives us.
Now, Sam, there's something else I think is really important that people get to know about you, and that's your motivation.
Yeah.
Right? You had this motivation for karate, motivation for your gym, and how you approach the business. Where does your motivation come from? What's the source?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I still ask myself that sometimes. When I finished competing in competition, it was a really, really difficult transition. And I'm still making that transition, and I probably still will be for the rest of my life.
That's interesting. What did it feel?
It's a lot of people look at sports. So people look at high-level professional sports stars and think that the transition from being an athlete to not being an athlete is that they get fat because they're not training anymore, or they're not making a lot of money anymore, and that must be really difficult. Which for some people it is. But it's really the psyche of being a competitor. When you're competing in sport at a high level, your whole life revolves around being better than other people. And that you might structure your approach to being successful in sport in a very internal way. So you might just be focused on achieving better lifts in the gym or better targets with your training process. You might have numerical measures that you want to get to. You might have specific technical things that, I proved this technique, in this sparring session or this tournament, this was better. And you might be very self-focused about not comparing yourself to others. But at the end of the day, none of that matters if you don't win. That your whole focus is on winning. Your whole focus is on being better than someone else. When you retire and you no longer have that platform to prove yourself better than other people, then and when that has been your drive and motivation for me for at least 15 years, that is a really difficult thing to come to terms with. And so I think in some ways I still rely on that competitiveness to motivate me in areas where maybe it shouldn't, or maybe it might not be the same motivation for other people. When it comes to either interacting with a client or running a business in a way that we provide these interactions of our staff with other clients, our main motivation is addressing those clients' needs and giving them the best service possible and trying to optimise their outcomes. Part of that, or a big part of that, requires me to be the best practitioner that I can be. So I need to be as knowledgeable, I need to capitalise on my experience, reflect on my experience, and trying to continue to keep improving myself. And then we need to run the business in a way that provides the best possible service to our clients. And that is by far my main motivation. However, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't still that competitive streak in me that still wants to be, I want to be the best. I want to be the best fighter in the world. I also want to be the best physio in the world. There's not a physio world championship. That would be stupid because you can't. It's not something that you classify like that. But I still want to be the best version of me. But I also still want to be better than others. And if someone comes to me and they've maybe had an issue that hasn't been resolved, and I've not been able to help everyone that comes to me, and I don't think any practitioner can claim to have had a successful outcome with every single client or every single patient they've worked with. That's just not the way things work. People get better for reasons that are completely unrelated to the people that are trying to help them. People get better through natural history, and people, for a number of different reasons, simply don't have the ability to recover from conditions. That's the facts that we face. And every health practitioner is trying to do their best to help the person in front of them. So I never look down on other health practitioners, and I sometimes get frustrated if people have been given not necessarily inferior management to that I would provide, but I do get angry when people are provided with information that's not true, that's not factual, and it's not up to date with the current thinking that we know, or we have a high confidence in being evidence informed and the right thing for that person. So that's a whole other topic we can talk about. But going back to that, if someone comes back to me and they've had an unsuccessful experience, unsuccessful outcome with another practitioner who has tried their very best to help that person, and I'm able to do something different that does allow that person to be successful, my main motivation is that person is happy, and that person, and I've helped that person improve on that aspect of their life. But I also feel like that's a little win for me.
Gotcha, yeah.
And that competitive streak is very difficult to go away. Now, that may be, some people might look at that as an inferior way to approach, especially an industry like healthcare. But I think that it provides me with a little bit of extra motivation to help that person. And the same thing from a business perspective. I want our business to be more successful and provide a better service than the gym next door or the clinic down the road. I don't wish that that gym or clinic is unsuccessful. I want that clinic to be better than Club 360 is today. But I want Club 360 tomorrow to be better than they are. Right? And then I want, if they step up the game and they're doing something different, that's fantastic. That gives me motivation to try and improve something with our business and then be better than them next week. But that competitive streak, that competitor, that beast still lives within me, and I embrace that aspect, and I try and use it where possible. But I also need to acknowledge it and need to understand where I need to push it to the side and not let the competitiveness take over.
That's good. It sounds like you get a lot of good self-awareness. It's in there, and you're channeling it in the right way, as opposed to in some more negative way, which might impact your business.
Yeah. And I don't think that I'd like to think that it doesn't come across with clients. I'd like to think that I'm very client focused when I'm with a person, but part of that client focus, as I said, requires me to be the best version of me as I can be, and so that's why I'm continuing to improve all the time.
I remember, I'll do a little anecdote here. Back to your motivation. You wanted me to read a book on pain, and it was like months went by.
Have you read it yet?
No, I didn't. I didn't read it at all. What you did is you would read it to me.
Yeah. Between sets. Yeah.
And you would get the page, and you kept reading it to me, and I saw that motivation. You're like, okay, this guy is not reading the book. I needed to read the book, and you found a way. That was that motivation I saw, and so that was really cool.
Yes, I think we've clarified.
So let's talk about training sessions then, not workouts. The future of Club 360, what are the training sessions? What's this vision you've got for training sessions for Current clients, more clients.
Yeah. So when I think about my career, and I think this sort of parallels Nathan's as well in terms of timeline, when I was in my 20s, I was working as a physiotherapist at another practice, and my influence on people's health was the person that was in front of me. Mm-hmm. And then into my 30s, we started Club 360 when I was 31. We then had a team, and that's been a continually growing team of other health practitioners that were able to help other people, that we were able to collaborate together in terms of sharing knowledge, sharing our experience, developing systems that we could use to influence the health of a lot more people than just the one person that was in front of me during my 20s when I was working as a practitioner, working just with my own clients. So that's definitely scaled the influence that we've had on people's health. Going into my 40s now, I think the next stage in Club 360 is just looking at our opportunities to scale that even further. So we don't want to help just the people that are working with us. We want to help a lot more people. Looking at some corporate ventures where we can provide seminars and instructional materials. So we have an online ergonomics and corporate health, workplace health program that we're trying to push, which it's basically a series of videos going through different facets of workplace health and ergonomics. And but we're also looking at other ways that we can help companies to improve the health of their team members. We've also got an education platform, which we have online fitness courses in English and Japanese. And so we're trying to promote that to try and share some of our knowledge and experience to health practitioners in Japan so that they can then help their clients as well. And by doing that, if we have, instead of having 20 people in our company that have their clients, if we can certify 1,000 people and each of those 1,000 people have 20 clients, and you can see how our reach can expand there.
Yeah, let's go.
So I think that scaling it in that way, and we do want to have other physical locations. We want to open other Club 360 locations, and we want to work towards doing that. And had the pandemic not occurred, we may have had a third location, but that's something that we want to work towards and doing our market research and seeing where that best location is. But that's something that we're looking towards. I think on a bigger scale, there's a couple of things personally that I would like to try to have some impact on. And one is the registration process of physiotherapists and our ability to work in the national health insurance system, which currently our clients can't use their national health insurance. A lot of people do have international health insurance, but the number of people on those expat packages that provide international health insurance is actually decreasing. There's a lot more sort of local hires, and so that limits people's ability to utilise our services. And so that is something that I want to try and look into and look at what other non-English speaking countries do in terms of their registration and see if there's any way of influencing the Japanese system in that regard. The other one, which I would really like to see, which is maybe slightly more realistic but still a little bit of a pipe dream, is having some sort of change to policy in terms of health insurance based on someone's activity levels. So in other parts of the world, there's reductions in health insurance premiums and things like that for people who are seen to be or proved to be physically active, who have gym memberships, who are engaging in physical activity and exercise. I think trying to change policy in Japan, whereby that even within the Japanese national health insurance, where there was a slight reduction in premiums depending on someone's activity level, I think
that'd be great to see.
Even just nudging that towards someday, that being the case in 20 or 30 years, having some impact on a policy change like that. As everyone who lives in Japan knows, things like this happen extremely slowly. So it might not even happen within my sort of career, but if I was to somehow have some influence on that, I think that would be something that I'll be really proud of in terms of scaling our impact on the health of people in this country.
I think it'd be great. My mother is 87 in the US, and she's a part of a program like that.
Okay.
Where by doing things and she gets
really?
points.
Yeah.
It's funny. She's even got a Fitbit now because I think she walks so much in a day, and it helps her premiums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a great system, and I think that you just need data and proof to show that the long-term investment in decreasing health insurance premium will lead to a healthier community, healthier population, which will then take less expense away from the health system. So
I hope we wish you good luck on that, because we definitely can use it here in Tokyo and Japan.
Yeah, for sure.
What about, Sam, any regrets? You had this really amazing career in karate and then now in physiotherapy as a practitioner and starting your own company. Any regrets?
I wouldn't say regrets. I don't like the word regret, and I think that everything I've done and everything that hasn't worked well, I've learned from. I'd like to think that I've learned from and still trying to learn from. Things that I've done would have done differently, I think. I mean, early on, in terms of my karate career, like we talked about before, about my focus on physicality, and I think that sort of transitioned into business as well. I think I tend to have a motivation for something, have an idea, and then channel my energy and just go hard. And so from a karate perspective, taking a step back and analysing matches, being more tactical in my approach, I think would have seen me. I was successful being technical and being strong and fit, and that was what I was proud of. That if it got down to the point where it was a stamina match, I would most of the time be able to run over the other person. But I think one of the things that's helped, like in the last 6 months, is doing jiu-jitsu, which is sort of my main training focus at the moment. And jiu-jitsu is very different to karate in that it's very tactical, very analytical. There's a lot of problem solving. And I think I've learned from jiu-jitsu that I need to be more analytical and need to think more about things. And so that would have been useful from a karate perspective. And I think just from my business projects and things, I tend to, like I said, get my head into a certain mindset and then just go, rather than researching options a little more thoroughly and even just listening to people and trying to get a little bit more advice and assistance with things. I think I like to do things on my own and perhaps not listen to people as much as I probably should. So they're all things that I think I've learned from and trying to continue learning from. The things that maybe I would have done better, but maybe if I had have done them better in the first place, I wouldn't be learning. So that's how I like to approach it.
Learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Tell us about your goals. Any personal goals you've got set out?
I think I used to set very outcome-based goals, and I think long term there are some personal goals, financial goals, and things that I've got. But this year I sort of set very specific process goals. So things that I want to do that don't depend on other people. So I've talked a lot about sort of goal setting in the past, and in general, there's the three basic types of goals are the outcome goals. So if we're talking about sport, it's winning the world championship. Now that depends on so many different factors. The most important of all, who I'm competing against, which I have no control over. Then you have the performance goals. So I want to achieve a certain goal, but it's very outcome based. So it's I want to bench press a certain amount of weight or something like that. I want to run a 5K in a certain time. That's all great, and I think that you need to have some of those goals. But having process goals, I want to get a certain amount of sleep a night. So I did use that as a specific example. It's maybe a goal.
I need to go like that.
So I actually made my goals at the start of the year public. I posted them on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I said that if you're around me and you see some of these goals, let me know how I'm going, and if you can.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So if you're on my social media, you can check those out. But there was a variety of things, but they're all process goals, different things: health, business, relationships, family, training, and so doing those little things. My main goal is just to sort of see Club 360 grow in the ways that I've described before, and just continue to optimise the service that we're providing to our clients. And then just I guess within myself, having 3 kids, my goals have to be very family orientated as well. So, providing the best opportunities for my kids in terms of their education, in terms of their experience, what they're exposed to. Lucky that I have a wonderful wife that has been extremely supportive through my athletic career and through the business, and is the best mother anyone could wish for. Actually, equal best with my own mother, I guess I should say. But she's amazing, and together, running 2 businesses and having 3 kids and being extremely busy and living this crazy Tokyo lifestyle, it's not easy, but we've got a fantastic partnership, and I'm lucky to have her, and so it's very much sort of the Club 360 based goals, and then the goals for our family.
No, that's very cool. You do have a great family, and Lonnie's a wonderful wife. Before we close out, Sam, I've got one interesting question I want to ask you.
Yes.
You are a fierce competitor. Again, world-class level for karate. But I know there's 2 things that you're afraid of.
Yeah.
That people probably wouldn't imagine you would be afraid of. Can you tell us about those?
I'm terrified of birds and fish. So I don't know. There's specific incidents with both of them. I'm not sure whether I've had a aversion to these creatures these species prior to these events happening. But for as long as I can remember, I've had that, I can only use the Japanese term of kimochiwarui sensation with the wings, and it's just unnatural for something to move and look like that. You're looking at me going, no, it's not. But yeah, I think they're weird. They're just weird creatures. But we were on holiday in Fiji one time, and I wasn't super young. I was probably 8 or 9. And I had a snorkel on and goggles, and I put my head underwater, and I don't know what I was expecting. I think maybe I was expecting to see some fish swimming around, but I was surrounded with them, and it just freaked me out. So I jumped out of the water and took the goggles off and ran back to shore. The bird one, we had a bird cage when I was a kid. I was probably maybe this table times 1.5, and so high, and anyway, I think we had 3 birds in there, and I would go in there to feed them, and I would hate going in there to feed. I was a little bit cautious. I was scared, so I was obviously scared already at that stage. I went in there. My nephew, who's a year younger than me, went in to help me feed them, and my little brother closed the door on us, locked the door, and started shaking the cage, and the birds went crazy, and that scared the shit out of me. So that was a somewhat traumatic experience. I think my little brother didn't think this through, the fact that what he'd done to his older brother and older nephew. So I think he went and hid behind my mum for a week. But yeah, those 2 experiences. So I've always been a little bit funny around those species.
Thanks for sharing that, Sam. Sam, it's been a pleasure just being on the interview you. I think you're a wonderful man. You've got a great career, and you've got an amazing family. I love that you do the Tokyo Living podcast. Thanks a lot for having me on and being the host.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much for doing this, and for doing this twice for the listeners and viewers. We actually recorded this once and had some audio issues. So I do really appreciate you taking the time and for giving me this chance to sort of talk a little bit about myself. And yeah, for the people that have been a part of my life in Tokyo or in Japan for the last 18 and a half years, and even leading up to that, and have had some influence on me, thank you. I've loved every moment of my time out here, and I've had the chance to meet some fantastic individuals that have influenced me in a number of different ways. So thank you, and for everyone who supported Club 360. We're actually going to have an interview where we talk a little bit more about Club 360 next week, and we'll have my regular guest host Lani back in this seat. But I hope you'll tune in for that one. And for all the regular listeners of the Tokyo Living podcast, this is episode 99. Next week we'll be releasing episode 100. Thank you for watching and listening, and thank you for your support. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.